This is our work about sex, murder, and the meaning of life by Douglas T. Kendrick. Our objective was to make a summary of Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of this book. Before chapters 1 and 2, there is also a small introduction which we also wanted to talk about. The introduction starts with a really interesting sentence from Douglas T. Kendrick to all his readers. The sentence is the following: We have probably never met, nor have anything in common, but our lives are more connected than what you may think. No matter how different our cultures, beliefs, and lives are, we will probably respond in similar ways to different situations. That's partly a result of sharing the human nature, but we are attached not only by a common evolutionary past. Our decisions are connected to others, as we live in a society. Afterwards, he talks about complexity theory. Complexity theory explains in some way how all that works. Combined with some facts with evolutionary biology and cognitive science explain, as you will see, the science of complexity gives us a new way of seeing and understanding our own characteristics. Above all, it makes us take into consideration what it means to be a member of the human race. An interesting fact which we wanted to talk about is that Douglas Kenrick lasted decades until he had this book written, although the final result was fantastic. Another curious fact of this writer is that to a large degree, his way of studying was self-learning. He went to university, but he read social psychology books from the library and he discovered things that the teacher could ask or explain but did not. This is how Kenrick started to develop an idea and coming across his personal opinions. This is what the writer reflects on the first pages of chapter 1. Furthermore, we wanted to point out a sentence which Douglas Kenrick writes on the introduction, more precisely on page 23. This sentence reflects on a really interesting way our society and how we are connected between all of us, even with people which we do not know who they are and we may not even know in all our life. This is why we wanted to share it in this presentation. The sentence is the following: Every day, all our decisions feed into a network of social influence that links us not only to our immediate neighbors, but also to brokers on Wall Street and to total strangers, halfway around the world. Indeed, all human beings are interconnected in a complex web, like millions of ants in a giant colony.
Okay, so now we are going to start talking about the chapter 1 called Standing in the Gutter. The author at the beginning of this book explained how he went through a delicate situation just a few days before his graduate comprehensive examinations. As he was in a self-handicapping spirit, instead of studying what he had to, he went to the campus bookstore and bought a book called Primate Behavior and the Emergence of Human Culture by the anthropologist Jane Lancaster, a book that influenced part of his writings, where he tries to answer the big question of our time related to social psychology. That was all for chapter 1. Now we are going to talk about chapter 2, which is called Why Playboy is Bad for Your Mental Mechanism. Douglas was interested in the fast tracker eye. He wanted to know what would catch the subject's eye when they were seeing a crowd of people pass. When you see this picture of Where's Wally, what's the first thing that you see? Maybe you see first the boy in the bumper car, or the two that are flying. From a distance, it may seem like a simple amusement park, but there are many nonsense within this scene. This interest in the fast tracker eye phenomena arises when he was in college. When he paid attention in the crowds of people between classes, for him, the majority of students he saw were beautiful. But when the people started to enter classes, he did not see any beautiful student. Due to this, he decided to make a laboratory experiment in which he made different students observe small crowds of people, and later these students were asked to identify whether or not they had seen a particular face. In this experiment, men stared almost twice as long on beautiful women than an average-looking woman, and later, when they were shown pictures of women that were in the crowds, they were especially accurate at seeing where they did or not see a particular pretty woman. Nevertheless, when they were shown a crowd of other men, they spent more or less the same amount of time looking at everyone. Females in this study spent as men more time looking at beautiful women, and in fact they were also good at remembering if they had seen a particular pretty female. Unlike men, females looked selectively at the handsome men that were in the crowd, but they were unable to remember the good-looking guys that they had just seen. Douglas concluded that men overestimate the number of beautiful women, and female subjects also estimate the frequency of gorgeous women in the rapidly presented crowds, but they did not overestimate the frequency of handsome men. Another experiment Douglas Kerrick and her partner Sarah did was to investigate how construct and comparative could change a judgment of something. In the experiment, there were two groups of subjects. The first one was exposed to a group of beautiful women, and the other half of the group were shown a group of average-looking women. Afterwards, they had to judge an individual average-looking woman. The results of the experiment were that the one who had seen the beautiful woman before judged significantly uglier than normal the average-looking woman.
For men in relationships, exposure to beautiful women's photos makes them create a comparison which undermines their feelings towards the woman who they are with during their life. However, for women it is slightly different. They do not compare their mates with male models. They normally focus more on their social status, and this can create an unfavorable contrast between their partner and men who have this high status. There's a quite interesting question in this chapter about this experiment. Does seeing beautiful women or successful men change how we feel about ourselves? The answer is no. Looking at highly attractive or highly successful members of our own sex did not change people's self-ratings of how attractive or socially dominant they thought they were, but it did change their guesses about how they would be rated by other people. There is an evolutionary reason for these results. Our minds are designed to look for the beautiful and the powerful. Just because our ancestors picked the mates with the better characteristics and even competed between them to pick the best mate to survive and reproduce. At the end of this chapter, Douglas asks himself several questions that had to do with the conclusions of the previous research he had done. What's a mortal to do? Are we helpless in the face of our evolved mechanisms, which may lead us astray without our conscious awareness? Not completely. Douglas is aware of the dangers of an overabundant diet of mass media images on Playboy, People, Sex and the City, or Dancing with the Stars. He thinks that if we stop buying Playboy and watching this kind of TV series, we can have more relaxed life in which we do not compare us to each other.